as it relates to weight training.
Yeah.
Is there a prescriptive for how to breathe during resistance training? Here I'm thinking with weights, not necessarily body weight only movements, although I suppose it could be, that applies 75% of the time to 75% of the people. What I was taught, and I'm hoping you're going to tell me this was wrong, because then there might be more benefits that awaiting me, is that I should exhale on the effort and inhale on the lesser effort portion of an exercise. Is that true? Is there a better way to breathe?
There is a better way to think about it. So, number one, if you can breathe and brace, then this conversation goes away. So if you can you can maintain intra-abdominal pressure while breathing, then I don't really care when you breathe. Very challenging to do at very heavy weights. If we flag this on two areas of a paradigm one over here, you're going to do a set of 30. And you're going to do front squats where a barbell is sitting on your throat. If you don't take a breath, this is going to end one way and one way only, you passing out. Clearly has to be some breathing strategy. The other end of the spectrum is, let's say you're going to do a vertical jump. You don't need any amount of breath there. It's never going to happen, right? The question is, what about in the middle? Right? So I'm doing some sort of strength training there. Well, number one, make sure you're braced, and then you can get away with less need to worry about it. In general, a decent strategy is to maintain a breath hold during the lowering or eccentric or most dangerous part of the movement, and then you can exhale on the concentric portion. So if the bench press is our example, if you held in, braced, lowered it under control, and now started the concentric pushing away force, and then you wanted to take an expiration during the last half of the concentric portion, that's an okay strategy. If you're going to do a single rep, you don't need to worry about it. You can just avoid or omit breathing entirely. You're going to be just fine. If you're doing more than that, especially 3 to 4 to 5 to 7 to 8, you're going to have some breathing strategy. A very common one is probably every third breath. I'm going to do like, exhale on the third, reset, rebreathe, something like that. If you feel like you need to breathe after every one, that's okay, but it's going to get wasteful because you have to take time in between reps of sitting there. If it's a squat, that's different versus a deadlift if you're resting at the bottom. So there is a little bit of game here. So in general, though, is that 75 kind of rule you threw out. Breathe in, do the lowering, and exhale on the out if you have to. Less reps, don't worry about it. More reps, then you need to come up with some sort of breathing strategy.
How about breathing in between sets and maybe even after the workout?
Yeah.
This is something I think a lot of people overlook. And because it is the case that recovery has to do both with the specific activation and to muscles and the nervous system, but also the attacks on the nervous system can also take place between sets. I mean, if you're really geared up between sets and you go to adrenaline, as high in between sets or close to it as you are during your sets, you can imagine that the recovery would take longer, or at least that you're not spending adrenaline in the most efficient way, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, fair. You're not going to see any athlete that I work with just breathe in between. Whether it's in between innings or in between rounds, every single one of them is going to go back, sit in the stool, and they're going to immediately be into a breathing routine. A very intentional one. They're a little bit different for every athlete, depending on the sport. Even PGA golfer, there's going to be we just hit our ball, we're moving to the next one, we're going to go into a breathing strategy. Every one of them. It's a huge area of potential benefit and consequence if you're just ignoring it. In general, we want to do any sort of calming breath. We want to restore. It depends on what we're combating. Are we combating low oxygen or high CO2? So that strategy is going to be a little bit different. But in general, that is a huge time opportunity to get better. In fact,